Hi, everybody. Welcome to the QB School. I'm JT O'Sullivan. Today, what is it like to be on an NFL practice squad? We are talking about it, talking stories, talking experiences, talking dollars. Let's get it going. Welcome to the QB School. The idea for this video came from a question from Coach Colo. Great channel. JT, could you make a video about how is it being on an NFL practice squad? Just an idea. Thanks, and keep uploading, man. Coach, excellent question. There are a number of kind of immediate responses I want when I start talking practice squad. The first thing that usually hops up in my mind is it's a combination of things. You know, it's certainly better to be on a practice squad than be at home. But if you're on a practice squad, that means you've been cut. The team doesn't think that you're good enough to be on the active roster. You will not be making anywhere near the amount of money you would be making if you were on the active roster. But, massive but, it's way better than being at home and out of work. And so for me personally, I was on a practice squads 3 different times: the Chicago Bears, the Patriots, and the Panthers. Now, the Panthers for only a week at the last week of the season, so a little bit different experience. But each one of those experiences for me was a little bit different. And so before we jump into it, talk a little bit dollars and cents here. Now, the practice squad experience and the practice squads have even changed just this past year. So I'm not going to give like a ramp up on all the different rules about practice squads. But in essence, all you do is practice. You get paid significantly less than you would on the active roster, but significantly more than you would at a normal job for the amount of work that you're doing for a week. And so that is good and bad all at the same time. The experience for me personally was a few different things. One, it's a combination of things. You're dealing with a lot of uncertainty, volatility. You're getting cut, but you're also getting picked up. So I got cut from the Packers and got picked up from the Bears. When I was on the Bears practice squad, I then got picked up on the active roster with Minnesota. So you're going through all these kind of mix of emotions, highs, lows, and the lows are low, but they're not that low because you get immediately picked up, and the highs aren't that high because you're not really on the active roster. Then you get picked up again onto an active roster, which is great, but you go from being basically the new kid in school, a bunch of different places. And so for me, the experience with the Bears was a good one. Kyle Orton was playing at the time. Rex Grossman was hurt. Jeff Blake was the backup. Wade Wilson was the quarterback's coach, and I enjoyed the room. It was a good group of guys. It was fun to get to know Jeff Blake. If I was being honest about what I remember most about those Bears practice squad moments, it would obviously be going against that defense. First of all, how they practiced, Brian Urlacher and company, Lance Briggs, Peanut. It was different level, Mike Brown. But it would probably be a combination of some good Kyle Orton stories for another day, some Jeff Blake deep balls in practice, and then probably the thing I remember the most that I did the most was probably after practice, 30 minutes a day, stair climber, old school stair climber, not elliptical, stair climber, right next to Jeff Blake, watching the Jerry Springer show. In fact, the week I got picked up by the Vikings, Jeff Blake and I were trying to plan to get a limo and take the quarterback room to go see if we could watch Jerry Springer, because I'm pretty sure it filmed in Chicago at the time. So that's honestly what I remember the most about that experience with the Chicago Bears. So the next experience was getting an opportunity to go play for the Patriots. That was a unique, special experience for me for a bunch of different reasons. I was fascinated with the organization, fascinated with just how they do things. I think everybody thinks that they do things a little bit different, and they certainly do, and it's almost probably a topic for a different video. But the experience of being on the practice squad there, which mirrored the Chicago experience, is you're staying in extended stays. As nice as it probably sounds for some of us right now to think, get out of our dwelling and go stay somewhere else. An extended stay at an extended stay, ironically, is not that great. And so I remember just a lot of, extended stays have this You think like they give you like free drinks in the evening between like 5 and 6, and it's like a Samuel Adams that you probably would never want to have more than 2 in a sitting anyway. And so those are the types of things that I remember about extended stays. The other thing about the practice squad specifically is that you're obviously never going to play, but you never really practice either. That's the ironic thing. So people probably don't get this. They probably think it's hard to imagine to pay someone to be on a team or a practice squad and have them not practice. But the starter in the NFL, unless you're trying to work in a younger player, the starter is going to take every single rep in practice. Every rep. Now they might, and I mean less than 25% of the teams I was ever on had the backup take any sort of meaningful reps in practice. So the backup is the scout team player. They are taking the scout team reps, and they want those reps to stay sharp because they need to play well if they get in. So if you are a practice squad quarterback specifically, you're really never going to practice. You might throw some routes to the practice squad wide receivers in individual time. You might throw some routes after practice. You might throw some routes on a Tuesday off day, but you're not really practicing. And so compound that with the frustration of not playing, not being on the active roster. The practice element of it is not that great. You're not getting better. So quarterback specifically, it's a real struggle. You got to be very intentional with creating that time and space to be able to work on your craft a little bit, however you can, because it's not in the best interest of the coaches, the other players. They're not worried about your development while you're on the practice squad for the most part. So they're worried about winning that week. They're worried about preparing for that week. You're worried about practice, getting better, hopefully. And so there's that tension that's always kind of around you being there, specifically for a quarterback, right? Because if you're a wide receiver, a DB, a linebacker, you get to serve on the scout team. There's plenty of opportunity for you to practice. You're going to get opportunities to shine. If you're a scout team practice squad quarterback, you're essentially a developmental project or a massive emergency SOS situation. And so it's just different. The other thing that I remember about those experiences are, just being in the locker room. You think locker room, you think, you're part of a team, you're part of an organization. Oftentimes you'll hear the word family thrown around, brotherhood. For the practice squad, I remember specifically in Carolina, and this is even most NFL training camps, there's like a main locker room, and then there's like the auxiliary locker room where they put like the practice squad players or the overflow, and maybe it's gotten better now, but that's really the truth of it. So you never really feel like you're part of the group. And so, and that's just the reality of it. Now, at the same time, I don't want to overstate the importance. It is very important if you're a young player and you get cut, you're out of the league for whatever reason, whether you don't get an opportunity, you're an undrafted free agent, being on the practice squad is a great opportunity to shine. And you sure as hell want to be on the practice squad rather than be at home. And there's a number of people at home that would love to be on a practice squad. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it's not something that you're really happy to be in, at the same time. So it's this, you got to be able to balance what that kind of tension is like and continue to thrive and get better and better. And so for me, it was always about just maximizing the opportunity, building the relationships that you could with the coaches, the organization, and then being able to try to continue to get better. I think the other thing that I learned the longer I was in that situation and in the career of being a professional athlete is someone decided to bring you into the practice squad. Now, it was probably not 100% agreed upon collective decision. So who's making that decision? Is it the general manager? Is it the quarterback coach? Is it the offensive coordinator? Is it the head coach? I don't think very many head coaches care about who their practice squad quarterback is. That's just me being honest. For the most part, for me, I think it was the general manager when I was in Chicago, when I went to the Patriots. I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. I think they probably it was Tom Brady, Matt Castle were the quarterbacks there. They needed a quarterback on the practice squad. I was probably had the most experience at the time available to go be on the practice squad. And what I mean by that is that at some point before this year, you aged out of the practice squad. Not aged out, you vested out. So if you had a certain number of accredited years in the league, meaning that you had a certain number of games on an active roster, usually 3+, I think off the top of my head, 3 years of being a vested player, you're no longer eligible for the practice squad. Now, I think that's changed. I'm sure that's changed this year for COVID. There's a lot more people available on the practice squad. There's a lot of different rules about bringing people up, bringing people down. But for the longest time, you couldn't be on a practice squad if you had more than 3 years of accredited seasons vested, which you want as a player. So all of a sudden, once you get what you want, you're no longer eligible for the practice squad, because the practice squad is a developmental thing meant to bring younger players along. That was a strange tension for me, and it worked out. I was very fortunate, again, very fortunate, because when I was on the active roster my first few years in the league, really my first 3 years in the league, I was never technically active for a roster. I was always the third quarterback that can dress but doesn't count against the active roster, or didn't then. The rules have since changed. So wrap your mind around that. 3 years in the league, 3 vested years, but never on the active roster. So I was still at that point available for the practice squad. So really fortunate that I fell into that kind of loophole in the practice squad eligibility. So again, it really was a bridge for me. It gave me opportunities. It got me seen by multiple different organizations and opportunities to learn different offenses, be around different coaches. But at the same time, I was very fortunate to get those opportunities. And so it's this weird world, right? This like limbo land where you're staying in extended stays. You're the new kid in school. You don't really get to be part of the team because you're never going to play. You're never going to travel, or rarely are you going to travel. And so it's just this strange limbo land that you try to make the best of. It's certainly better than being at home, but at the same time, you feel like there's a ceiling that you can't get better at practice. You're not being able to practice. You're not getting the same reps. You're not getting the same opportunity. And that's just the way it is. And so once you realize that, hey, I might only get 2 reps at the very end of a scout team period, you better make the most of those. You better be warmed up. You better be locked in, ready to go. And it's just this weird, crazy tension, specifically for the quarterback position on the practice squad. Now, it might be different now that the numbers are a little bit bigger, but back in the day when there was only like 6, 7, 8 people on the practice squad, if you used one on a quarterback, they better be on the developmental track to be part of your organization. And so it's just this weird tension in the quarterback room being like, why do we need someone on the practice squad? We've got a veteran, we got a guy playing at a high level, we got a potential Hall of Famer, those types of things that it just is what it is. And so just to be aware of that was always strange for me. But the practice squad is an unbelievable bridge for many people. You get an opportunity, you get a chance to show out in practice, you try to make the absolute most of it. But is it also strange, getting paid what is a really good salary for a week, but then seeing a peer colleague get, for that same amount of time, get $500,000 for a game check. So it is this weird limbo land that I think you can get lost in if you're not careful. But for me, I always thought of it as a great temporary job in a temporary job environment. And so thankful for those opportunities and kind of cherish those moments. But if I really go back and unpack exactly what it was, I don't know how much better I got at football while I was on the practice squad. I know that it opened up some opportunities as far as relationships, coaches, different ways to see and understand football. But at the end of the day, really, I remember cardio machines, extended stays, HBO, and being able to create that bridge to allow yourself to have an opportunity to continue to play, which is really the most important thing. You just don't want to stop playing. You don't want someone to tell you that your opportunity is up. And the practice squad is a great bridge, both financially for a lot of guys and an opportunity to continue to be in the building, continue to get reps, get stronger, get into the program, be part of that culture that you can't get while you're at home. So hopefully you enjoyed this one. Practice squad, a lot of mixed of emotions. Again, it is better than not being on the practice squad, but don't get it twisted. People don't want to live in that world. You want to be on the active roster. You want to do everything you possibly can to do that. But if you're not and you just got cut, being on the practice squad is a lot better than moving back home.